Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Balance in Mind, powered by the Lake Washington Schools Foundation parent chat for the month of April. We're talking about some really cool stuff. For every panelist that comes on, I meet with them to talk about what they're going to bring to the table for parent chat. And I really love our guest tonight, the methodology that she talks about and the overall structure. I just loved it. And I thought this is going to resonate with everybody, no matter what age your kids are. For those of you that are new to Parent Chat, welcome tonight. I'm Coach Sherry. I'm the founder of TeenWise, but tonight I'm here as a volunteer for the Balance in Mind program, and I'm excited to be here to help facilitate a conversation about parenting so that we all can support our kids in a way that really helps to bolster their mental wellness and their mental health, something that we're all very concerned about these days. So I'd love to welcome Kate on screen, who is going to talk to us about something super cool. I'm not going to give it away yet. I will let you tell them, Kate. But let's just start by saying hello and welcome. And we'd love to hear a little bit about you before we kind of dive into all of the great stuff you have for us.
Thank you so much, Sherry. How is my audio?
It sounds
Um,
great.
Good,
Great.
awesome. That's because it's very late at night here and there's no one else in my house who is using any devices. So I have all the bandwidth tonight.
Which is nice. Yes, just so everyone knows, Kate is nice enough to join us, even though she's in a different time zone. Like she said, very late and very stormy. So we hope that her internet and power last throughout this parent chat.
We have a backup plan in place, so it's going to be great. So, Sherry, thank you so much for having me. My name is Kate Garcon, and I'm a parent educator and a parenting coach. My company is called Guided Parenting Support, which makes me a GPS for the parents of toddlers through teens. And my focus in working with clients, with my private coaching clients, is really based on protecting relationships, understanding the development and the characteristics of all of the humans in the household, the kids and the adults, and then skill building. Because we know that all of the behaviors we see, whether they are kids and teens or whether they are adults, all of the behaviors are coming from either a dysregulated nervous system or a relational challenge, something that's gone on between some people that needs to be sorted out, or a lack of skills that just haven't been built yet and or skills that they have but can't access because their nervous system is dysregulated, right? None of us can access our best selves when we're flipping our lids. So it's all linked together with mental health and wellness. Because as we know, the basis for mental health and wellness is having a healthy, nervous system and healthy coping strategies for responding to the world. So I'm delighted to be here tonight to chat with you about something that I think is really cool.
I love that. And I just want to remind everybody that as we go along tonight, you are welcome to ask questions. We love to have the questions in the Q&A box, so it's in a tidy little place that doesn't get lost. And then we're going to ask you some questions as we go, and you can answer those in the chat box. Also, if anything comes up, like you want to comment, feel free to put those in the chat box. Which brings me to our first question, which is I want to know how old everybody's kids are so that we kind of know how to steer the conversation. It doesn't matter what age they are, by the way. This is all relevant, I promise.
Yes, very, very helpful to have a sense of like what age ranges we're talking, just so I can tailor my examples to be more relevant. If nobody's got a toddler, nobody cares about
Exactly.
toddler information.
Okay, so do you want to share your slides? I think
I would love to. Let's see if I can do that successfully.
so. We have, just so you know, Kate, 6-year-old, nearly 11-year-old, and 7-year-old twins. So far, that's the answers we've seen.
Awesome. Okay.
8 and 10. All right.
All right. Fantastic. So I was chuckling to myself when I saw the preview screen where you had called our presentation Harmony in the Home. And it's because so few people have actually heard of a body budget that they're like, what, why would I show up to this thing when
Right.
I have no idea how this is going to be useful in any way? So that made me laugh.
Yeah, we think about these things ahead of time in body budgets. Once we start talking about it, it totally makes sense. But yeah, sometimes you got to have that intro.
Awesome. So we're looking at an age range of basically like 6 is the youngest up to young adult.
25. Somebody has
Amazing.
10, 8, 17, 25. You're in all the ages there.
Amazing. But we
Jenna.
don't need toddler stuff. Cool.
No toddler stuff. No, no.
That's fantastic. All right. So, should we get started?
Let's do this.
Let's do this. This is good. All right. I'm going to close the chat so I don't get distracted.
Okay. I'll be monitoring the chat just so everybody knows. You can keep chatting away, but we'll let Kate not be distracted and just give us her great information.
So, body budgets. That's why we're here because, as I mentioned a couple minutes ago, the basis for our mental health, it's all connected to our physiology. There's no way to disconnect what goes on in our brain from the rest of our body. So I will give you, I think, an example of a body budget to illustrate it before we dive into some of the nuts and bolts. So I'm going to paint you a picture. It's a rainy Wednesday night, and you have had a rough day at work. You are tired, and you haven't eaten all day, and you got into a fight with a colleague, and your boss is kind of a jerk, and you had a horrible commute home. And as you're driving home, you realize you haven't peed since like 3 p.m. You don't remember the last time you had a sip of water. And you're dreading getting home because as much as you love your children, you know you're going to walk in the door late and you have about 20 minutes to get them fed and homework done and out the door to all of their various activities. So as you're driving closer to home, you feel yourself amping up a little bit because you know that your kids are going to be wild because they've been at school all day and they haven't had any downtime, and you're really not looking forward to it. So you get out of the car and purse gets stuck in the door and it's rain is coming down, and you get in the front door and you stumble over a backpack that has been left on the floor and you absolutely lose it. DEFCON 5 response to a backpack on the floor. Contrasting that, it's a Saturday morning, you got to sleep in, your kids are happily playing at something that requires no supervision from you. You're sitting at the table with your spouse, you're reading the paper, you're drinking your coffee while it's actually hot for a change. And you get a text from a neighbor saying they're on their way over with blueberry muffins. And you know these are delicious because this neighbor's a really good baker. So as you're getting up and walking to the front door to retrieve these muffins from your favorite neighbor, you stumble over the same backpack. And you sort of chuckle to yourself and you think, oh, those kids, they're always leaving their stuff around. And you just move it out of the way and you carry on with your day. That, in a nutshell, is how our body budget impacts our responses to kids' behaviors. And in turn, we're going to dive in tonight to how their body budgets cause so many of their behaviors. So that's the explanation in a nutshell. But there's more to it than that. I did not create this concept. I can claim no credit for any of the research that went into this. This is actually the work of neuroscientist and psychologist Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett. She works out of Northeastern University. And her work is in what the brain does behind the scenes. And she talks a lot about how the brain, its job's not actually to think for us. Its job on a wider level is to like just keep the species going. So its job is to predict what's going to happen and then allocate resources accordingly. So that means if it's that brain is coming home from work after a crappy day and it's heading in the door dreading what's about to happen, that brain is releasing cortisol and adrenaline, stress hormones, to prepare it for the thing that's to come, right? It's why when you're actually sleepy and you know you've got a good bedtime routine, then your brain releases that melatonin and gets you prepared for sleep. It prepares you for the thing that's coming. right? It's why we get excited about things. It's why we get nervous about things. That's all our body budget allocating resources based on what it thinks is going to happen. And so, it's super relevant for parents and kids and how they interact with each other and how you can increase the respect and the cooperation in your family. And also how you can support everyone's mental health and wellness. So that's kind of the nutshell version.
I'm loving this. Like so far, it makes me think of um, we're preparing for that thing, and
Mm.
when we're just expecting our kids to misbehave or to not do their chores or not do their homework, we're already revved up before we even know if they did those things. And
Absolutely.
vice versa with our kids. They're like, mom or dad's going to be mad. They're revving up already for that altercation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, the example that comes to mind right off the top of my head is I was working with a family with 4 adolescents, and the two older ones were more or less launched, but the third one was really challenging for these parents. And as I started asking more questions and diving in, I realized very quickly that they had a neurodivergent kiddo who hadn't been diagnosed. And so he had spent his whole like 15 years up to that point expecting that he was going to do things wrong, that he was going to be disappointing people, and that he was the bad kid. And don't get me wrong, these are wonderful parents, loving, kind, respectful of their kids, like just really wonderful parents. But this third one was so different from the two that they'd already raised that they were doing all the same things with him that they'd done with the older two with vastly different results. And so these parents were anticipating that this kid was going to keep screwing up. So he'd walk in the door, and as he was walking in, like you could see him like armoring himself up for battle because a simple question of how was your day to him felt like, he was engaging in warfare with Roman gladiators.
Mhm.
That's what his brain was doing. And his parents were armoring up. So what they thought was a pleasant, how was your day, wasn't coming out as a pleasant, how was your day. So it was just these nervous systems were bouncing off of each other. And once they had an understanding of what was going on and some actual tools to repair those relationships, the temperature in the house came down significantly. And then they started being able to collaborate on what this kid actually needed to be successful in his life.
I love that. Yeah, we think I've got 3 kids of my own, and you kind of think when you have kids, we just got to figure it out once, but you have to figure it out for every single kid because, like you point out, they're all different.
Yeah,
Our expectations need to be different. How we deal with them has to be different. So,
absolutely. I realized that I didn't jump off my first slide. So
yeah.
that's a body budget.
There we go.
And that's why you should care, because it's impacting every single decision that we're making, right? We've all done this. We've all said, "Oh, I would have handled that better if I wasn't so tired," right? Or, "Oh, I was hangry," right? Those are sort of the little quips that we use, but it's legit, right? The absolute baseline for a healthy body budget is sleep, nutrition, and movement. Those are the big three. I'm actually going to flip to my next slide because while those are the initial three, there are so many other things that we don't realize are impacting our body budgets. So one of the reasons I love this so much is because it applies to the entire range of neurodiversity, whether you are neurotypical, whether you are neurodivergent, wherever you fall on any spectrum, this stuff applies to any creature with a nervous system. So if you look at some of the examples on the screen, right, we know that being tired depletes our body budget. We know that being hungry depletes it, but nervousness and anxiety, that uses up those resources really quickly. So if you're a kid at school who is struggling academically or struggling socially, you're walking into that school environment already depleting your body budget, and your nervous system is already armoring up for battle, right? If you're a kid who's getting picked on, there's some fear mixed in there, right? If you're a kid who needs disability supports and you're not getting them, everything is harder. If you're a kid for whom sensory integration and processing is a challenge, the lights buzzing overhead, the sounds of people, right? The smells, the feel of your clothes on your skin, all of those things are incredibly depleting to a body budget. So when parents or teachers say things like, their explosion just came out of nowhere, it didn't come out of nowhere. It's been these little things that have been chipping away and chipping away and chipping away at their body budget for hours or days. And then they get to a point where their nervous system just no longer has the space to be resilient or be flexible. But if you look at the things on the screen that boost a body budget, movement, joyful movement is an incredible way to boost a body budget, right? Fresh air, time in nature, sunlight, all of those things boost your body budget and can bring your nervous system back into balance. Time to daydream. Daydreaming is an absolutely critical function, not only for self-regulation, but for learning how to problem solve. When we daydream, our default mode network kicks in and it does the coolest thing. That's when problem solving and perspective taking happen, right? We've all been in a situation where we've been like trying to think of the solution to a problem or trying to think of that person's name. And it's just on the tip of our tongue and we can't think of it. And we're thinking and thinking and thinking and it's not coming. And then we're like driving home in the car and we're rocking out to, Springsteen. And all of a sudden it comes to us, right? Or we're doing the dishes. It's just something mindless, right? That doesn't require our focus and it comes to us. We've taken that opportunity away from not just kids, but I mean, when was the last time we daydreamed in the grocery store line, right? We don't. We pull out our phone and we scroll or we read the magazines, right? So daydreaming is a beautiful opportunity to boost that body budget, right? When kids have screen-free downtime, when they have time to pursue creative exploits, things that they love, right? Time to just breathe, right? And just be. Play is a huge body budget booster for teens and adults as well, not just for young kids,
And on
right?
that one, Kate, when our kids hit middle school, we take all the play away from them in the school setting. They don't have recess. I was just talking to a middle
Yeah.
schooler and she's like, yeah, we don't get recess anymore. She was sad about it as a sixth, seventh grader.
It's
It's something we gotta
awful.
fit in. Yeah.
Yeah, it's awful how we're so funny. I heard a quote once that said that humans are the only species that's actively working against our own survival.
Yeah.
And I thought about that. I was like, oh my God, that's so true. We do. We know the things that we should be doing, but in the name of progress, we stop.
Yeah.
So, this screen kind of there are many other things as well, but this screen sort of encapsulates um, the things that can boost or deplete a body budget, right? And it is the things you don't necessarily think of. And when you tie in the fact that the brain is a predictor, right? With younger kids, if bath time or bedtime or mealtime has been turned into a battle, they start fighting it long before it actually happens because their nervous system is amping up, right? When you see kids with school refusal, there's a reason why they're refusing it, right? Because they're going into a fight or flight or freeze response because of something that's getting in their way, right? So when we start viewing behavior through this lens, it's a game changer because we stop thinking, oh my God, my kid is so difficult. Or why won't my student just do the thing I'm telling them to do, right? And this comes into the respect piece, respect and cooperation. Because so often we think about respect as meaning the smaller human needs to do what the bigger human tells them to do when they tell them to do it,
Of course, Kate.
right? But I was actually looking up, I'm going to pull up my notes for a second. I was looking up definitions of respect earlier. This is from the Oxford Languages website. A feeling of deep admiration for someone or something, regard, holding them in high opinion, being in awe of them. Like, what a cool way. Like, wouldn't you rather be in awe of the people in your family for the cool humans they are, rather than like demanding a certain level of cooperation that's beyond what they're capable of in that moment. Like imagine what that does for relationships. I
Wow,
just
that
thought
is
that was,
not the definition I would have thought of. I mean, that's when you think of it like that, it's very different if you're saying, I want my kids to respect me. It
yeah,
doesn't mean to do everything I say, to never talk back, there's
yeah.
so much more to it.
And it's cool because the second definition was giving due regard for the feelings, wishes, rights, and traditions of others. So it's being thoughtful and attentive and kind, right? Isn't that a better definition for respect? Like, do we want a
Definitely.
household and a school environment and a world where people are respectful because they're controlled, or respectful because they're kind and they're thoughtful and they're attentive to the needs of others? Like, what a beautiful world that would be. And how much calmer all of our nervous systems would be, moving around in that world. So yeah, that's
Love that.
that's kind of body budgets in a nutshell, but there's lots more to it than that.
There's so much, as you're like talking about this, I think about our kids being in school, like let's say 6 hours a day. They
Yep.
go in with hopefully a full body budget. If they've got school refusal or high anxiety, it's depleted a lot before they even get to school.
Yeah.
And it's just depleted throughout the day
Yeah.
because most of the things you're saying impact it positively, they don't get while they're at school. So
Yeah.
by the time we get them back at home, their body budget is like approaching that big old empty E mark. And
Absolutely.
then we get to interact with them.
Yep, absolutely. And so that is my next point, because everyone is just a walking nervous system, right? And whether you're looking at polyvagal theory or interpersonal neurobiology, it doesn't matter sort of which theory you're looking at, they all say the same thing, right? Everyone is a walking nervous system, and how we interact with each other is is dictated by, the state that we're coming into it with. And we use these things called mirror neurons to pick up on each other's states. So it's why we yawn when someone else yawns. It's why we're watching a sad movie and we cry, even though we are not personally affected by anything that's happening, right? We're absorbing that emotion even through the screen. So it's why, panic spreads through a crowd, but joy also spreads through a crowd. It's why there's such a draw to these communal experiences like concerts, or for folks who go to religious kind of events, people who go to retreats, any kind of communal experience with like-minded people. Those feelings spread through the crowd because nervous systems are attuning. And when adults do that with kids, then we can lend them our regulated nervous systems in times where they can't regulate themselves because they're little and they're learning. Even the teenagers are learning, right? And if we know that the upstairs brain, the prefrontal cortex, doesn't finish developing until mid-20s at the earliest. And if you've got a neurodivergent human in your family, which most of us do, then their prefrontal cortex may not be fully developed until they're 30. So expecting these like immature little brains and bodies to be able to hold it all together without all the stuff during the day that boosts their body budgets is pretty unrealistic. Especially when we can't even hold it together a lot of the time.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about you saying, they can kind of borrow from our regulation system, right? Which
Yeah,
means we need to be regulated, right? That if
that's
like
exactly it.
yeah, the story you described coming home from work and it's, a horrible day. And the research shows that if you walk in totally stressed, even if you try to act like everything's good, the body knows and your kids' blood pressure actually will raise. Like they've done
Absolutely.
research on this without saying a word. Even if you're
Absolutely.
smiling, it just they know you're close to
Yep,
your
they
kids.
know. And the craziest part about that is if they say to you, like, Mommy, are you okay? And you go, I'm fine, everything's fine, everything's great.
Yeah.
What it teaches them is, wait a second, I'm observing that something's wrong with mommy, but she's telling me everything's fine and I trust her. So if she's telling me everything's fine, she must be right and I must be wrong. What I'm observing must be wrong. So kids don't learn to trust their own guts and to trust their own
Mhm.
observations and their own instincts. And
So
that
we're
comes back
Yeah, so we're not teaching
in
them emotional intelligence. It's the
exactly.
opposite. Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
it's
I
the
love
opposite.
that.
So
Okay.
like saying to them, yeah, wow, it's amazing that you noticed that. That I did. I had a rough day. I could use a hug. Like, come here and give me a
Mhm.
hug. Because that time together will attune those nervous systems and kind of bring everybody back into balance. I can't remember if it was on the previous slide, but physical affection and touch, if you are a person for whom that feels safe, right?
Mhm.
There are some folks for whom, in a sensory way, they're like, no, just do not touch me. But for people who welcome touch, getting wrapped up in a hug is one of the most regulating things for your nervous system. It's why we put babies on our chests so that they can feel our breathing and our heartbeat and all of that. But so you said, Sherry, about, in order to lend the nervous system of the regulated adult, we have to be regulated ourselves. And that's kind of where I want to focus next, because it's all well and good to understand this body budget thing, but like, how is that actually useful in people's day to day? So that's where I want to kind of go next. And there's really sort of three avenues. And I mentioned that Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett, pioneered this idea. And then there's this incredible, I'm sure you've heard of her, incredible child psychologist, Mona Delahooke. And she took this idea and started applying it to kids' behaviors. And when I started kind of reading about it and then applying it, I started applying it in little ways at first with parents. And then when I started realizing how effective it was, I now use it as a basis for the coaching that I do. This is a huge part of understanding the characteristics and development of the humans in your orbit. I even go in companies sometimes bring me in to talk about this to their non-parents because it impacts everybody.
Right.
So the first thing that you can do is you can proactively boost your body budget in preparation for something that you know is going to be hard later. So if you're coming home from work in that first scenario after the crappy day, maybe before you get out of the car, you sit in the driveway for 5 minutes and rock out to a song that you really love on the radio. Because we know music and singing and humming, incredibly regulating for the nervous system. Yelling is also super regulating for the nervous system, which is one of the reasons why meltdowns for kids are nervous system resets. It's like a clean slate. After they've melted down, they're good to go again. Because it's
Of
super
course, we're
regulating.
left not regulated after that, but
Right. But for them, they're ready
they're
for round
good.
two. So think about, okay, I can feel myself agitated. If I go in the house right this minute, nobody wins. If I sit in the driveway for 5 minutes, maybe you meditate, maybe you do some deep breathing, maybe you rock out to that song, maybe you just sit in silence. Whatever it is that your body needs, taking that 5 minutes is going to save you time because you're not going to walk in the door radiating disapproval and setting your kids off too, right? I have one family where the dad decided, the parents together decided that the dad would come home from work 15 minutes later on a daily basis because he was going to stop at a park that was en route home and go for a walk around the park and not have his cell phone out and just breathe, get that fresh air, get that movement, get that sunshine, because he and his wife decided that she would rather have him coming home 15 minutes later, regulated and ready to walk in and tag her out, than have him come home straight after work and him be just as dysregulated as her and the kids at that point. So it's these little things that you can do for yourself, but also for your kids, right? If your kids if your kids have homework and you can tell when they walk in the door that they've had a day, right? Asking them to sit down and get their homework done before dinner isn't really going to be in anybody's best interest. But doing something with them, getting them outside to play, getting that fresh air, laughter is huge for regulating the nervous system. Do something playful together, spend some time together, or, send them out to walk the dog, whatever it is, something that can boost their body budget so they can get through that that thing that's going to be hard for them, right? Around the holidays, this is really tough because for some kids, going to a big family party, for example, is really exciting. And for other kids, it's anxiety producing. And excitement and nervousness feel the same in terms of bodily sensation. It's the context that we apply to it that tells us what we're actually feeling. And so whether your kid's excited or nervous, it's depleting their body budget. So planning ahead for those road trips, planning ahead before you go into the family where, great Aunt Martha is going to want to hug everybody and ask why you don't have a boyfriend yet and what college are you going to and all the things, right? So whatever the characteristics are of the humans in your house, figuring out what their body budgets need and then proactively doing that before something hard is a really great way to kind of buy you the extra energy and engagement that you need to get through whatever that thing is. Just gonna take a second. The second piece there is adjusting your expectations. So if you've boosted as much as you can, and you can tell it's still going to be a day, then adjust what your expectations are, right? Maybe that means that your kid does their math homework, but not their history homework. Maybe that means you sit beside them to get them started. Maybe you scribe for them because for them, writing is the thing that is going to send them over the edge. Maybe you talk about, okay, we know we've got a busy day today. We've got these chores to do. We've got these errands to run, and we've got 3 birthday parties. What can we take off the list? Right? And you talk about that together and you figure it out so that the expectations become more manageable, so that you're setting everyone up for success. When we proactively boost and when we adjust expectations, what we're doing for kids and teens is we're actually helping them expand their window of tolerance, right? We're not saying, I give you permission to not people ever. We're saying, you're going to learn how to be a person out in the world in whatever way is going to work for your nervous system and your neurology and your temperament. And we're going to gradually expand what you can handle in ways that feel good for you and that aren't coercive and that aren't forcing them to mask or to be someone that they're not. So it's a really respectful way of helping them learn how to engage with the world in ways that respect who they are and their autonomy.
That makes me think of a client I was working with, um, who didn't do well in like the regular school environment. And the
Mhm.
mom was concerned. A loving mom, and she's like, but she needs to learn how to survive in the real world, like that regular job, which was funny because the mom did not have a regular 9 to 5 job at all.
Right.
So when she realized that, she's like, oh, yeah, she has choices she can make to live how she wants to live and what fits with herself, instead of conforming. So, yeah,
You're
I love this.
absolutely right. Like I think about adults, right? We choose what clothes we buy. If a sweater's too scratchy, I'm not going to buy it, right? If a food doesn't taste good to me, I'm not going to eat it. I get to say no, thank you. So why don't we give kids the same opportunity? And then once they feel safe and they feel regulated, then they'll have the confidence to slowly expand their window of tolerance. I was listening to a really great podcast. The name of the psychologist is escaping me, but she was talking about temperament and how she's a temperament researcher. And she was talking about how temperament is like you're born with it, but temperament doesn't dictate your personality. It just kind of dictates like the outer edges, right? So let's say you're born with a more introverted temperament. That doesn't mean you're not social, right? That doesn't mean you don't like people and you never talk to people. It just means that your outer edges for social are going to be narrower than the outer edges for social of someone who has a more extroverted temperament. And I thought, what a great way of looking at that, right? As adults, we get to choose who we are. We get to choose our career, our social activities, our hobbies, our partner in life, our friends. We get to choose all of those things. And kids don't get to choose any of it. So they don't know how to choose it when they get older based on what feels good. So by doing this with them, we're going to be saving them from all the anguish all of us went through trying to figure out who we were and how to regulate our own nervous systems and how to advocate for ourselves and how to say no thank you and all of those things that we didn't do because we were too busy being, nice and agreeable and we were afraid of punishment. So sorry, that's a tangent.
I know, good tangent.
But so the third thing that you can do is you can abandon ship, right? If you wake up in the morning and you've got plans to go to brunch and you've boosted as much as you can and you've adjusted expectations and you're looking around at your humans going out to brunch right now is going to put me squarely in the seventh circle of hell. Just say, we're not going to brunch. We're calling it. Our body budgets are not, this is not happening. We're calling it, right? And this is something that I know many of the families that I work with have a lot of neurodiversity within the family. And this is something that they've really struggled with because they don't want to let people down, right? They don't want to let down grandma by not showing up at the event, right? Or they don't want to let down their kids' friends by not going to the birthday party. So I help them reframe it by you're actually protecting your children by doing that. You're protecting your children's relationships with themselves. You are protecting their relationship with you because you're not forced into a situation where you have to be harsher on them in public to avoid judgment. And you're protecting their relationships with those other people. Because I promise you that the child whose birthday it is would much rather not have their friend having a meltdown in the corner because it's all too much for them and have a nice quiet play date together another day and celebrate than put their friend in a position to feel guilty and awful about ruining their birthday party. So by saying to your family, we're giving ourselves permission to do what's best for us, and we're not doing that thing. It's not quitting, it's not weakness, it's not lack of resilience. It is we are protecting our relationships with ourselves and other people, and we will regroup when those body budgets are boosted, and we'll figure it out from there.
So let me ask you a question about that. So I know with anxiety, if you avoid something you're anxious about, it can actually continually increase that anxiety, right? Let's say it's social anxiety, it's a birthday party, right? So you don't go to that one, you get invited to another one, you don't go to that one, and before you know it, you are too anxious to ever go to a birthday party. So how does that fit into this abandoned ship?
That is a fantastic question. The most important piece here is that however your family is choosing to do this, it has to be collaborative. So if the parent is deciding, like, I don't want my 7-year-old to be socially anxious, so I am going to make them go to this party, then what's happening is not only does the child still feel all of those things, they also feel incredibly alone and unseen. They feel like the people who are supposed to be their safe, sturdy launching pad are not. And that just dysregulates their nervous system even more. But when you can talk with your kids about it, and I love Dr. Russ Green's model of collaborative and proactive solutions, kids don't want to be anxious either. And so when they're included in the problem solving, and when you can name it, when you can explain to a kid or a teen that, anxiety is actually your brain doing its job. Its job is to keep you alive. Its job is to protect you. It's just doing it really, really, really well. And, the body budget thing is all about predicting, right? What it thinks is going to happen and allocating those resources. When we feel that bubbling up, it's because our brain is predicting what's about to come. So it's that guard dog doing it really, really, really well. So when the kid or the teen are actively involved in problem solving it, you're going to get a lot more mileage. You're going to have respect, you're going to have trust. And, maybe going to that birthday party with all of the other kids and the noise and the smells and the taste, it might not actually be social anxiety at all. It might be sensory integration issues, right? So anxiety gets blanketed as anytime your body feels this thing that says don't do it. But you can figure out, like, okay, what is it about the party? What is it about that thing that doesn't feel good for you? And then you can dig in and you can problem solve it together. So I agree with the folks who say avoiding is not the answer. But I also feel like it has to come from collaboration and understanding and a whole lot of really digging in to see what's going on underneath, because there's always a reason for that behavior.
Yeah, and it might also start with go back to number one, right? If they're anxious about the party, make sure that you're proactively boosting, adjusting the expectations,
Exactly.
and then you have the choice to abandon ship if
Exactly.
necessary.
Right.
Yeah.
We know that being tired impacts anxiety, it increases anxiety. We also know that increased anxiety negatively impacts sleep. So you get into this, right? It's the predicting brain, right? The kid who
Yeah.
didn't sleep well a couple nights in a row, or the kid who wet the bed, and now they can't sleep because they're terrified they're going to wet the bed, right? Their little body is flooded with cortisol because they're predicting that something bad is going to happen. So, us thinking, well, let's just toss them in, right? They need to get over it. It really does damage their relationship with themselves and their relationships with us, right? We know kids can do hard things when they have people beside them that they trust and when they don't have to go through those hard things alone. So, really, really problem solving it together is an awesome way to deal with that. And of course, as always, if things get to a point where they're impacting your kids, significantly, you seek professional guidance, right? You go to your pediatrician, you get referrals, there are lots of people available to help. I find a lot of my clients come to me because they're on a waiting list for therapy, or they're one of the kids in the family is working with a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and the parents are wanting things they can actually do at home, because an hour a week with a psychologist is helpful for that child, but there's 167 other hours in that week where they're not with the psychologist. So they're looking for things that they can do as a family, and they have all these other humans at home too.
Hmm.
So, it's how to manage all the nervous systems that are happening in the household in really practical ways, that don't cost anything.
Yeah, and also the parents are steering the ship, overall. So we've got to
Absolutely.
have the tools to
Absolutely.
do it. It's not just sending our kids out to get support. We got to get our own support.
For sure. Keeping with my GPS analogy, I always say the parents are driving the family minivan and I'm the GPS in the passenger seat,
Yes.
along for the ride, getting you to your goals and your values and addressing your pain points.
Mhm.
And it's amazing how that feeling of autonomy, when parents realize how much power they have to positively impact their kids' short and long-term success in ways that like don't cost anything. Daydreaming is free.
Yeah.
Going outside to play is free.
Right. And I know that, and I see this in like the parenting forums I'm in and such, that when parents do get overwhelmed, they're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's going on in this family, or oh, it's all turbulent. The kind of default, if they don't get some support, is tighten up the ship, more
Yeah,
control. And when you do that, you lose the collaboration, you lose the compassion, and you
absolutely.
lose your connection with your kids because they no longer see you as that loving, compassionate parent. They see you as the person who's cracking down on everything, controlling everything. So that's why
For
this is
sure.
such a great conversation to have.
For sure. And we know that control in the short term can look like it's working, but it has huge negative impacts over the long
Yeah.
term. And I can't tell you the number of clients who've come to me, and when we've started chatting, and they initially they come because they want like more creative consequences, or they want to regain control of the family. And when I ask them what they want over the long term, they say, well, I want a great relationship with my kids. I want them to come home at, more than just at the holidays. I want them to be around. I want them to call me for advice. And, you know, then they say, well, like I got punished as a kid and I turned out fine. And I'll say to them, okay, tell me about your relationship with your parents. And immediately say, well, God, I haven't talked to my mom in 8 years. Or we see them at Christmas and that's it. Or God, I live 3 states away. Right. And they don't realize it's all connected. Right.
Hmm.
And what we carry in our nervous systems is based on what happened to us when we were kids. Even things we don't explicitly remember, our implicit memory remembers. It carries it with us. So
Yeah.
sorry, my nose is itchy. Huh. Must be, I don't know, something
It's
going on
getting
with the
late
weather
for you,
here.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. So
it's
bottom line
interesting.
is we've got to think about when we're feeling overwhelmed as a parent, um, to not just go to that control place of control. the other places comes in when you start sharing with colleagues, your friends, what's going on, or grandparents. A
Hmm.
lot of people, you just got to start cracking down. You just can't let them get away with
Right.
anything. And so
Send them to
listening
my
to
house
kind
for
of,
a week and they'll come back better
yes,
behaved and that kind of, yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so we've got to be mindful of going out and listening to kind of peers and family members
absolutely.
because a lot of them are going old school and that's
Yeah,
the control
for
everything.
sure. Because that's what feels comfortable for their nervous system.
Yeah.
You actually bring me beautifully to the next slide because when you're feeling out of control, the best thing to do is to dig in with some curiosity and start noticing. Because when you start to notice when your own reactions to things don't align with the thing that actually happened, right? That DEFCON 5 response to tripping over the backpack, right? When you start noticing the consistent pain points, then you can be proactive. I'll give you an example. I was working with a family that had an 8 and a 9-year old, and the kids both loved playing soccer. And they started to notice with their 8-year old that she was melting down before soccer practice, like kind of every other time, not consistently enough for there to be a pattern until we started digging into it and we realized she was melting down before soccer on the days dad was taking her to soccer. She was totally fine on the days mom was taking her to soccer. When we dug a little deeper, we realized dad had been a varsity level soccer player. He really loved soccer and had been, without realizing it, putting a lot of pressure on the kids because they were going to be soccer players. Soccer was going to be the family sport. And so he was giving a lot of coaching, a lot of advice, a lot of what he thought was loving, supportive guidance. And his daughter was cracking under this pressure. So when we figured out what was going on, then we could do two things, right? Support them in proactively boosting her body budget before soccer practice and repairing that relationship with dad and soccer. So what they decided to do for a while was arrange it so that mom would take her to soccer. And again, this was the solution they came up with once they understood better about nervous systems and body budgets. They decided that they would have mom take her for a few weeks to give her nervous system time to calm down. So her brain wouldn't immediately go to that place of, oh, dad's coming, ah, fight or flight. Then they started going, the parents were able to go together so that she knew she'd have mom's unconditional support and dad just like sat quietly. He just like smiled and gave her a thumbs up and that was it. Over time, they were able to get her to the point where she was totally fine with dad taking her again. But it took a little bit of time for her body and her brain to recognize that this was in fact a safe, stable place. And again, dad was doing it out of love, right? He meant no harm, but that was how her little nervous system was perceiving it. Um, so noticing those pain points. If you notice that your kids always struggle after school, right? They come home and they need to get a snack and get out the door to karate and they're melting down, or they're going to an after school activity and you're getting reports of like bad behavior happening at the activity. The things that are happening consistently, those are your clues to what is going on for your kids and what is going on for you, and where you can make adjustments.
This is great. Yeah. Got to be scientists in our family.
Absolutely, yeah, scientists, detectives, all the things.
Mhm.
And then the other piece that's interesting is it's rare for there to only be one or two humans in a household. Usually you've got a bunch of nervous systems and they're all bouncing off of each other. And if you've got one kid who needs complete quiet and a chance to sit and breathe and use mindfulness to boost their body budget, and you've got another kid who needs like a rock out dance party to boost their body budget, and they share a bedroom, that is going to be challenging because they can't boost at the same time in the same space because they need very different things. So this is why that collaboration piece is so important and why body budget shouldn't be a mystery. right? When families start using this language from very young, the kids can identify, oh, my body budget, is pretty depleted. I need something in order to regulate my nervous system. And by having these collaborative conversations, you can figure out how to make it work within your family in ways that are really respectful of everybody. And it's amazing what kids come up with when they're involved in the problem solving. It truly is remarkable.
Stuff we would never have thought of, right? Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's amazing.
Absolutely. And it's we want them to be able to collaborate out in the world as, successful adults. And yet we think that as kids, they need to be told what to do in order to, grow up to be a good kid.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's the dichotomy for sure. So I haven't kept an eye on the chat. Are there any questions that have rolled in? Is anyone
We don't have any questions.
curious about
And just a
anything?
reminder to everybody that's on, feel free to pop questions in the Q&A box, and we will answer those for you.
Yes, we will. Happy to.
What I'd love
Um,
to ask people who are on, if you can put in the chat box something right now that's kind of resonating with you, an aha or something you hadn't thought about, or how this relates to you. I'd love to see that. And Kate, if some people chime in, I will let you know.
Yes, please do. It's pretty cool when you start seeing your own behavior through this lens and kids and teens behavior through this lens. It also takes away a lot of guilt and a lot of shame.
Yeah.
When you realize that it's your brain protecting you or your brain proactively trying to do something, and that there are skills that can be built to support you and your kids.
Yeah, and I will say around anxiety specifically, I will see a lot of kids come in to me and they're trying to get rid of the anxiety. It's like they're like, "Oh, I just have to control this." And when just kind of like parents controlling kids, when we try to control the anxiety, it's like it just gives it more power, it fights back. So
Absolutely.
they're so relieved when, and I like that you're doing this basically the same idea, is that anxiety is there. It's not a bad thing. It's just
Mhm.
how you interpret it, how you use it, how you process through it. So if our
For
kids are
sure.
anxious, just think about how we're talking about that in a way that, let's talk about it from a body budget standpoint, kind of a coping skills standpoint,
Yeah.
and go from there rather than let's get rid of this anxiety thing.
Absolutely. And when body budgets are balanced, a lot of those sensations that feel like anxiety fall away.
Yeah.
It's like when we're tired, we're more easily kind of set off, right? When we're tired, we crave sugar. It's because our body doesn't have enough resources to keep us awake and regulated on its own. It's too depleted. So it's telling us to outsource, right? And we know that getting something sugary is going to give us that hit of energy that we need to get us through whatever the next thing is. And it's why, for people who drink alcohol, often the next day they feel a little more anxious or a little bit more sad. And they sort of realize, like, oh yeah, it's because I had 2 glasses of wine last night. Okay, that's
Hmm.
it. Like, I'm not struggling with clinical depression. I am feeling the physiological after effect of this thing and my body budget. And I can't tell you the number of times that on a Sunday, if we've been out for dinner the night before, and on a Sunday, I'm like, gosh, why am I feeling just a little down today? And I'd be like, wait, we went to dinner last night. We had a couple glasses of wine. I needed to remind myself that this is how my body responds to that.
Hmm.
And then I make my proactive choices accordingly.
Right.
It's figuring out who we each are individually.
It's very empowering when you begin to think of it like this. And I know if some of you who are on here with us tonight are having kind of chaos in your household, you don't know where to start. And when you just start with this simple idea, then you start to feel empowered again, which feeling empowered also increases your body budget.
Absolutely, right? Feeling like we have some control and some
Yeah.
autonomy, and not the kind of control that's like, you know, punitive and involves holding all of the humans
Hmm.
really tightly, but knowing that there's a way through this
Yeah.
can really help some optimism bubble up.
Yeah.
And knowing that you're not alone, and that you're nobody's broken. They're just, everybody's body is different and everybody's body budget is different. So I put a little summary up. Um, your body budget really is the key to your emotional regulation. Because as I said, emotions are just sensations that we give context to. Um, so, when your nervous system is regulated, it gives us, we talk about resilience a lot. And, we say like kids need more grit, they need more resilience. Kids these days, they don't have any resilience. Resilience really is a nervous system term, right? It speaks to how much space your nervous system has to be flexible, right? When you've had a really great day and something goes wrong, you can roll with it. When you've had frustration after frustration after frustration and something goes wrong, it's a lot harder to roll with it. And it's not because you don't have grit or stick to itiveness or whatever you want to call it. It's because your nervous system's just done for the day. Mhm.
So true. Okay, so I just wanted to tell you a couple of comments here. Someone's saying their mind races so much it's really hard. Absolutely. And just remember to start with that number one, proactively building up your body budget so that you can, like, with that racing mind, you can have what you need to kind of calm that down. And someone else said that they love the body budget term. It makes a lot of sense, kind of like not being able to help others when your cup is empty.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, so
And Jenna
true.
says she's going to try, and that's all we can do. We can try our best and reach out for
Absolutely.
support if you need it too, of course.
Absolutely. I was working with a family where the dad was like a Wall Street kind of bro. We live really close to New York City, so we get a lot of like finance guys. And
Hmm.
he was saying to me that he didn't realize how much he'd internalized this body budget concept until like he walked into his office one day and he was like, "Oh, Joe, you're looking kind of down. Like, how's your body budget, bro?" And it's like, is everything okay at home with Susan? Like, did you sleep okay? What do you need? Like, we're going into a big meeting. What do you need? And that's when it kind of hit me. Like, people are walking around with their nervous systems in offices and workplaces all over the world and, not realizing how much power they have to kind of set themselves up for success.
Yeah, I love that.
I think that's it.
This is great, Kate. We are out of time. We're like
Oh,
at
and there
our
was a
ending.
question. Shoot, and I didn't get to answer it.
Yeah, so
Um,
go ahead and let's answer this question really quick.
okay.
And also, on your next slide, do you have where they can download the thing that you have for them?
Yes. So it's actually a couple slides away.
Okay, let's
It's
put that
there.
up while we answer
Yeah.
this question. Okay. So
So
the
yeah,
question is,
if you go to my website, on the very first page, you will see a place to fill out a form to get my free guide, 10 tips for getting your kids and teens to listen.
ooh, I like that.
Okay,
I
so
love that.
this question is how can we balance our expectations against the school's expectations and testing, especially when we feel our child is being pushed when they're not ready and we are seeing improvement, but the school or teacher isn't seeing enough improvement? This is a great question and a really tough thing. And my answer to this is without knowing any of the details, ultimately, it is your job to protect your child's relationship with themselves and their relationship with learning. And so that's going to mean going to bat for them with the school. Sometimes it means against the school. Um, it's a really tough thing because we all want our kids to be, we want our kids to have a good reputation in school. We want them to be, well thought of. We want them to be the kid who gets along with everyone and who gets good grades and all of that. And more important than any of that is how your kid views themselves and them getting the support that they need. And some teachers are amazing. I was a teacher for 18 years and I still look back now that I know this stuff that I didn't know when I was teaching. I still look back feeling incredibly guilty that there were students I didn't support the way they needed me to because I didn't know. So I feel like going to the school collaboratively and approaching it as let's problem solve this together is always the first step. But ultimately, your kid is looking to you to protect and to preserve their relationship with learning. When they're 25, it's not going to matter whether they met the expectations when they were 7. What's going to matter is that they know that you have their back and you're helping them build their skills. That's my very short answer to a very big question.
I love that. Great answer. Great answer. All right. So I just want to say thank you again, Kate. This is great information. And I hope everybody that's here with us tonight has gotten so much out of this. I know I have. And we'll make sure we have this recording sent out to everybody so you can watch it again, but also share it with other people because I think can be really impactful in family homes, especially when there's kids who are struggling. This can really help to bring some calm and some empowerments to both the parents and to the kids in the household. So really appreciate that. And before everybody hops off, if you can put in the chat box a thank you to Kate, or you can do reactions, hearts, whatever you want to put, something so we can acknowledge her for being here with us tonight. And also, I just want to say, don't forget about our next one. Next parent chat is in a couple weeks. We're talking about sibling rivalry, which will be a very interesting one. And we can also think of that in terms of body budget now that
Body
we've got
budgets
this
for
information.
sure.
Yeah, those it's basically those systems, nervous systems interacting. So it'll give us a whole new way to look at that. So,
Well,
but
thank
thank
you,
you,
Sherry,
everyone.
and
Really appreciate you. And Kate, thank you so much.
thank you to everyone for tuning in. I really appreciate everyone's time.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.